Okay, so I was asked to make a tier list, so let's start off with Greatsword. So Greatsword does a lot of damage with just one button push. With the addition of the offset and the perfect guard and wilds, this weapon literally has no weakness and can do everything. It is truly an S tier weapon, which is why it's going into A tier. Okay, next up we have the Sword and Shield. So a lot of people say that the Sword and Shield is a jack of all trades and master of none. I say that the Sword and Shield is a jack of all trades and master of all. It can do pretty much everything. It can cut tails, it can knock the monster out, it has mobility, it has combos, you can drink without sheathing your weapon, and with the new perfect guard mechanic, you can just block everything. So it's basically a lance, but better. So therefore, it has no weakness and is going into S tier. Okay, next up we have is a Switch Axe. So Switch Axe is possibly the worst gaming experience I've ever had in my entire life. Every move has a lot of commitment from the axe mode and the sword mode, and you have very limited mobility and very limited ways of responding defensively to monster attacks. But the zero sum discharge is really cool, so that's going into S tier. Okay, Hammer Bros, you're up next. So a lot of people think that the hammer is a simple weapon for very simple-minded players. I want to bring the counter of it is a very simple weapon for very experienced and sophisticated players, because a good hammer player will tussle around with the most dangerous part of the monster, the head. And they gave the addition of the wire dash, which gives some extra mobility, and the offset does kind of suck because you can't do it from neutral. You kind of like hit your hammer on the ground for one hit and then you can do the offset, but otherwise when you get the knockout, it's super satisfying and the hammer is super fun to play, which means it's going into S tier. Okay, then we have Gunlance. So Gunlance players and hammer players have a lot more in common than they think. A hammer player will zero sum discharge whenever they get a knockout. A Gunlance player will zero sum discharge whenever they get a Wyvern Fire out. Also, they probably have the Wormstake driver noise on loop when they go to bed. Therefore, they go into S tier. Okay, I'm just going to move the lance into S tier. And I know what some of you are thinking. Isn't the lance just the gun lance but without the gun? And you'd be very wrong, because the lance is surprisingly more aggressive than the gun lance is. And I'm not just saying that because they're an endangered species. I'm saying this because they have a beam clash. Insect Glaive. So, man, did Capcom really try to nerf y'all into the ground game? The Descending Slash is a really good move. The Ascending or Rising Slash is a really good move. Try to find someone to play with that won't take all the wound spots, because it is a very vital part of your rotation. Overall, this generation of Insect Glaive is kind of in like a really weird spot, which is why I'm going to put it into A tier. But the player base did bully Capcom into giving back the vault, and then they also just threw in a free offset too, which is kind of base, so I'm going to put you into S tier. Okay, Bow. Really makes you feel like Legolas tier. Heavy Bowgun. You can cosplay as a Space Marine, S tier. Okay, I'm going to move the Light Bowgun into S tier. Now I know some of you are probably rolling your eyes, but let me explain. We need to draw in the Fortnite Zoomer player base. We need numbers, guys. Capcom is a company and they need big numbers to show to their investors. This is strictly for the good and health of the entire series. I'm putting Light Bowgun into S tier. Okay, next up we have is the Swag Axe. So Swag Axe is probably the best gaming experience I've ever had in my entire life. Every move is very weighty and meaty, and Capcom gave the axe mode a offset and they gave the sword mode a sword parry. So there's a lot of defensive options if you get into trouble. And on top of all that, zero sum discharge is really cool looking, and the full release slash is also really cool looking as well. Straight up going into S tier. Okay, Longsword.
Pick it up.
Okay, Dual Blades.
Pick it up.
Okay, last but definitely not least, Hunting Horn. So, Hunting Horn players are just an ascended being. We're here trying to fight monsters, and they're playing smooth jazz. And really, you can't tier smooth jazz. Alright, that's my tier list. I hope you found it useful.